It looks like we may be connecting. So we're going to try to get early on. All right. Are we there? Are we live?
It's trying. And sorry for being late.
It's all right. So early, I was telling everybody, you're on the East Coast, correct? Or kind of on the Eastern Seaboard?
Yeah.
So a super fun thing happened today. I don't know what internet service you use, but up here in the New England area, we're on Comcast or Xfinity or whatever it's called. So we've been having some real issues today with some spotty service. Seems to be affecting pretty much everyone from Maine on down. So
Yeah.
trying to schedule a live event has been
on that. Yeah.
But welcome. Our guest of honor has arrived. Early, how are you doing today?
I'm well. I'm good.
Excellent. So what I'd love to do and what I've been telling people before they hopped on the stream here is we're going to do a couple things with our guest early. We're going to learn a little bit about his background in playing and kind of get a sense of him as an artist. So anybody who's not familiar, we can get them caught up to speed. And then what we really want to do, because we're on the Elixir channel and they make our favorite strings, is we're going to talk strings, we're going to talk acoustic technique and playing style, and maybe get a little sense of how you approach your guitar playing and kind of your own personal vibe with the instrument. So let's take it back to the beginning. For those who aren't familiar, let's learn a little bit about where Early James comes from and kind of how you ended up where you're at now, because I know your first record is on store shelves as we speak.
Yeah, I'm from Troy, Alabama, and I graduated high school in Luverne, Alabama. Made my way to Birmingham when I was about 21 because my sister practically begged me to. I was probably in denial about like my options in Luverne. Didn't go to college or anything, so my sister said if you move to Birmingham, I was playing like maybe 1 to 2 gigs a month at that point at 21 and playing completely by myself. And I moved to Birmingham, and sure enough, like could pretty much gig almost every day of the week, or at least every other day. And eventually, through a bunch of dumb luck, somehow got word to Dan Auerbach of songs I'd written after 2 or 3 years here in Birmingham.
Interesting, because Dan actually helped produce your record. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this a little bit in the interview we did with the magazine, but tell us how that kind of happened and what Dan's role was in the making of the album.
My old roommate, songwriting buddy, to try to make a long, because it really is, man, anytime you get a record deal, I used to try to convince myself it had something to do with, you know, my how good I was, but it's a lot of dumb. It's absolutely. But my buddy Ryan Saab moved to Nashville to pursue music. It's so ironic that him moving to Nashville to pursue music somehow did something to me for musically, because I stayed in Birmingham. But he ran into who would eventually be my manager, Clay Brad, who he just showed him a YouTube video of me at the Basement in Nashville. And Clay Bradley then would have a meeting with Dan to see Kendall Marvel, because he represented Kendall Marvel, who also did a record with Dan. So it was just that kind of dumb luck where it was like literally just conversational, like, oh dude, I just saw this today, like check this out. And then Dan's like, oh man, I'm gonna give that guy a record deal.
I mean, sometimes people say it's who you know, but in your case, it really was. It's just sometimes it's that happenstance connection that you make where somebody passes on something to somebody and somebody knows somebody, and you know, Yes, I understand why you would think it's dumb luck, but it also does take a good heaping of talent to catch the ear of someone like that who is at that position in the industry. At that time, were you playing with a full band, or was it just you doing kind of a solo acoustic show?
At that time, when sparingly, it seemed like it was always some duo project. So it was either me, acoustic guitar with upright bass, Adrian Marmolejo,
Mhm.
and that's what I was touring as. That was like, I was also lucky in that way to have um, a booking agent before I had a manager or anything. So um, it was usually either uh, acoustic guitar and upright bass, or sometimes a trio, and then sometimes just uh, drums with Devontae Hutchins in the early days. I would play electric guitar. Uh, he
Cool.
would play drums, but a lot of it, I would say 90% either solo or just guitar and upright bass.
So that brings us to one interesting question that we wanted to touch upon, and it does go to technique and style and things like that, but we get a lot of young players, especially at the magazine, who are doing their own solo thing. They're writing a lot of music and looking to perform for the first time and doing something similar to you, or maybe it's just a solo show, or maybe they have an accompanist on keyboard or upright bass in your scenario. And one of the things that we often hear is when they hit the stage, it doesn't sound like it does in their bedroom when they're just writing with a journal or something like that. Because when you're on stage, you've got to fill that space. And there are great instances where just a person solo with an acoustic guitar in an intimate setting is wonderful and it can take your breath away. But a lot of times, if you're trying to capture people's attention in a crowded room or a club, or where their attention might be diverted amongst other things in the room, really filling out that space is a tough challenge. So as a guitar player with an acoustic and an audience in front of you, is there something you do to kind of tackle that challenge of filling that space and making your guitar kind of take on all of those frequencies for attention grabbing, or what, probably not describing it best, but I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, man, the guitar, the guitar can be a tambourine in tune with your voice, or it can be an orchestra. Sounds like it's a very versatile. So um, like if you're, you know, if you're singing some, if your lyrics do all the talking for you, you don't necessarily need to do much on guitar, but sometimes, why not say more? I think like a, a song in mind would be this song of mine called "Dance in the Fire."
Can we hear a little bit?
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Kind of sits on a one, not that much. You would kind of sits on E minor, but like it's kind of like so I'll start the show with that. I think it usually, I learned this kind of from my buddy Ryan Saab, who I brought up earlier. He would, in Nashville shows, he would sometimes play these bars where they'd be packed. He would play this simple guitar part over and over until everyone shut up. I'm not saying in my crowds, like, it depends on the show, but that usually is a good way to start a show. Is just like do something until everyone just was like, "What is he doing? Like, what is going on right now?"
So you
And
have to be bombastic and strumming away and doing that sort of thing.
yeah, just like freak them out because you're playing something like, is he playing like Baroque and classical music right now, or like I don't know, like, and that one starts like that, and I take a pause and we count into it, and it's like. So it's got the weird quiet thing, and then it's got the bombastic tri-party part of the guitar.
And this is one of the things that I think I was trying to allude to earlier is when you're on stage as an acoustic performer. One of the things that I heard in that passage, as opposed to the one where you're kind of sitting on the one there earlier, is there's almost this percussive element on the beat, every beat. And if you're performing with, let's say, just an upright bass, or even if you're performing with a drummer, if it's just the two of you, reinforcing that beat on guitar is a really great way to do something rhythmic that doesn't have to be too showy or flashy, but it really reinforces kind of that driving element of the song. Would you mind playing that just again so people can hear how that works and how you're actually timekeeping while keeping the chord change going?
I've been told it's kind of like call hammer banjo.
Okay.
So my right hand is. So these two fingers.
It looks like you're actually doing a percussive kind of.
Yeah, on the low E string.
Okay.
I like to call that the Jack Johnson. Because when I think back, I guess that was one of the first percussive guitarists I ever heard. But yeah, I mean, you kind of palm mute on the bridge, and oop chuck. That's all it is.
It's a kind of a tried and true staple of country music that a lot of people who are outside of that world probably should learn, because it's a really great way to keep that driving element going. And like you showed there, if you're just palm muting and doing the kind of percussive slap almost on the sixth string at the same time, you can get that kind of chugga chugga thing going really quickly, even if you're staying on one chord or doing a simple change back and forth between two chords. It's a way to emphasize rhythm when you don't have a giant rhythm section. If it's just you on stage and you're in charge of both the harmony and the rhythmic element, it's one thing you can do to kind of keep that going, which is really cool. Do you do that in other songs too?
Yeah, man. I and you can do it with a pick as well. You know, like I'd use a black mount pick.
So what we got there, we've got a thumb mounted pick. Okay.
But it's flesh on metal, but the pick can liven up the string if you're muting it. But yeah, man, I do that in it's really hard to think of a song that I don't mute in. Like that was a technique that I kind of learned early on. But I think it was because I was like, it took so long to be accurate with the way that I play. And I think I wildly flailed my fingers for a long time because I never could really hold on to a pick. Which is what now I'm just through this past year of quarantine, I've started using a thumb pick because it's almost impossible to drop them.
Well, it's strapped onto your finger, so.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think for a long time for a long time because I didn't want to use a pick, I would act like I was holding a pick and just grab my fingernail out and break my fingernail all the time. I still have like a scar right here because I would cut, and eventually something just clicked in my head, and it was like just like finger pick, and I don't know, but yeah, I use that technique on pretty much. I've written and songs I cover, I adapt it into a cover.
It's interesting because a lot of acoustic players that we talk with about their right hand playing technique, I would say it's a pretty healthy percentage. Almost 75% of the guitar players that we talk with really don't want to use a pick or shy away from a pick on acoustic. And I think I'm not sure why the disparity is there amongst electric players who almost exclusively want to use a pick, but it's interesting because you can get a lot more dynamics, I think, on the acoustic, and maybe that's what draws people to it. And especially in your left hand, you're doing a lot of interesting things there dynamically too, where you're not just, strumming and chugga-chugging on the same chord. When you're doing the harmony parts, in addition to the rhythm parts, you're adding these little flourishes in on the chord, adding extensions and things that give a little bit more richness and character and just a little bit more interest, as opposed to just strumming the same chord, which is, when a lot of people start out, what they do. Would you mind showing us what's going on in your left hand, just as you add notes and take them off? It's really great level of interest there.
You want me to do that song I was...
Yeah, do that again, because what's going on in your left hand is not, the same old thing that we hear from a lot of singer-songwriters, where it's just like strum, 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 strum. Okay, next chord, strum, strum, strum. You're taking away extensions to add some interest.
Yeah, so this is borderline an open tuning.
Okay.
Go drop D and play a D minor. It's an E minor because I'm capo too. But
stapled up to
not really. I like this chord shape because it's kind of a bluegrassy D, because it's neither major nor minor. It's like a power chord. I can make it minor, but I usually don't. So it's just that, like, I'm just like so situated in this box to where I don't really have. So that's just my pinky. So there's just all these fun little things you can do right there with moving the shape of the chord.
And this is something I think a lot of acoustic players should take note of. If you're finding that your rhythmic parts are a little stagnant or they're just not as interesting, if you're hanging out on that one shape, find ways to add little flourishes. Like you could add the minor third if it's an open tuning and it's neither major or minor. Find where you could add that in. Even if you're going from a suspended chord and lowering it to find the minor or the major, that's a little bit of interest that just might spice things up to where you need it. If you're finding it's just a little stale or something like that, if you're hanging out on the same shape, find those in between notes, find passing notes, things that you're doing here where you're just kind of hammering on and adding to both the rhythmic and harmonic interest there. I think that's a really great that acoustic players should take note of.
It's good to just, like, let's say you're starting a song in G, or you only sing a song in G, and let's say it sits on the one. Tune your guitar in G and, like, strum that, but then, like, man, like, let's say if let's just say, look, this is technically opening, so like you could, especially if you're like playing with a drummer, or even more so if you were alone, like just simply doing is so much infinitely better than like every little note of excitement you can add to a thing, or piece of flair. Like,
you playing it for about 5 seconds was a much better way to explain it than me talking about it for 5 minutes. I think if people hear that, they'll connect it in their head, especially someone like me who comes from more of an electric world. When I pick up an acoustic, sometimes I feel kind of stuck because it's the same instrument, same number of strings, same number of frets, but it's a much different feel and a different tool to use in the context of an actual song or a mix. So doing that thing where you're hanging out on that same harmonic element, maybe it's the 1, maybe it's the 5, whatever it happens to be in the progression, and finding those little interesting things that you can do to make it exciting and add that spice. So I think listening back to your record and seeing the clips of you playing live, that's one of the really great things that I appreciate about your playing. And doubly more impressive is when you're singing and playing at the same time, which is something I, for the life of me, still cannot do to this.
Well, thank you, man.
Do you have any tips that could help people? Because I know that's a big sticking point, especially in the acoustic world. If you are just by yourself, trying to sing and play, especially things that might be a little bit more complex than just strumming the changes. Did you do any special practicing or rehearsing, or did it just come naturally to you?
There are plenty of times where, man, Adrian, my bass player, it's definitely more noticeable in the piece. It's hellaciously noticeable. But like, man, I will fall, like I will lull myself into borderline, I will get so into my right hand, and then all of a sudden I will, in my mind, I will try to do something new. I'll be like, I'll make this like quick thought of like, oh, I should try to do that. Like I'll hear it and try to play it, and I'll mess it up completely, and my right hand just turns off. So never stop singing. You can stop playing guitar. You can even flourish it in a way that makes it intentional. That takes a lot of messing up before you get good at that. But never stop singing. Just,
okay.
The purpose of the guitar in that moment is to steer, the melody. So when you're practicing, never stop singing. When you're practicing singing and playing guitar, like, just like make your way through the song every time, and like try to insert the rhythm, like count into it. If you mess up, don't stop singing, just like keep going with it.
Okay, so tip number 1, and this is something that I never followed, is don't stop singing. Keep singing, because the guitar can either the background or
even to yourself in your own bedroom. Don't just lie to yourself. Just you don't mess up.
Well, I lie to myself all the time, and I tell myself I'm a wonderful player, so I'm halfway there. I appreciate the suggestion.
This guy in the comments is telling me to speak Spanish. I'm sorry, man. I don't know how to speak Spanish.
Well, sorry guys. Maybe we can find a subtitling feature that will translate things. But if you unfortunately come from a part of the world where English isn't your primary language, I apologize for that. But we'll see what we can do about translating the subtitles after the archived version of this goes on the IGTV channel, because I think this is all great information, and no matter where you're from, if you're picking up an acoustic guitar, there's something you can learn from just about everybody. It's hard to learn in isolation. I think now YouTube is a great teacher, but talking to fellow players is a great way to learn, which is why we're doing these things, because I'm learning. Hopefully you're learning something watching this. And Early's given a lot of really great information about how he approaches his technique. Is there anything else that you do to make changes more interesting? Let's say going from a 1 to something else, because I know those transitions, especially in the singer-songwriter community, and I'll hit upon this a lot, can be kind of, by the books standard. I'm going from this chord to this chord, but in your music, there's a really great way, and I don't know how to explain it, maybe other than you playing, is when you transition to chord, there's kind of this great fluid nature of it, which is hard for a lot of acoustic players to really latch onto.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example of that. A lot of the time it'll be, simply chromatically walking a chord.
That's a really great technique. Talk about that, because that's a way to get from one place to another that a lot of people kind of overlook.
So like, let me get. this song Stockholm Syndrome.
Are we going back to a standard tuning here?
This is straight up open D. But just for simplicity's sake, the DAD, sharp, A, D.
Got
But, you know, that this song works on a one. It's a big one. It kind of teases. I'm not going to be able to play it unless I keep it where it's not played. But yeah, hammer-ons, pull-offs, and chromatically walking. So like the song is like a 1-5-1-2 situation. So like. Like two, going to the two was like would in the situation would be literally. So like, and the chorus is I don't really know what the chords are, and I'm sorry for that. It's kind of moving from scale rather than, so like the chorus is, oh, I wait and I wait, la da da, la da da, la da 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 da.
Yeah.
So
So
like,
I can immediately see
moving a chord shape.
Yeah, I can immediately see how that adds much more interest moving through the changes, and hopefully that sparks some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, like, literally this entire song, again, open D, D A D, F sharp, A D, and it's just like the Hendrix bar chord, like the.
Yep.
Like it's. Moving that shape, it's just so infectious. Just like, I mean, that when I first started doing open tunings, I wrote so many songs doing an open tuning and then playing a familiar chord shape, standard tuning, and somehow making that make sense. You know, like making a C shape, making a G shape, making a D shape in open G or in open G or your own made up tuning. That's a lot of fun to do too. Just like randomly tune the guitar and make up shapes. You know, it's there are so many rules now to where there shouldn't be rules. Like there's enough rules. So
We have a couple questions here. So while we still have you on the line, we have a question here. Actually, kind of ties into what you were just talking about with different tunings. When you're playing. Sorry, I'm reading and talking at the same time. When you're playing open tunings like an open G, do you find that you have to use a capo more to compensate for what you would normally do in standard tuning? So I think that's an interesting question for people who haven't dabbled in a lot of alternate tunings or open tunings. Is do you have to rely on a capo to kind of help reorient yourself, or do you actually play it open as it was designed, or a mix of both?
I definitely I can go to open G for the sake of this question.
Okay, great. Open G being one of the more common open tunings. If people haven't kind of investigated that, it's a really great sound. Rolling Stones use it a lot, actually in an electric setting, but certainly in the world of country and western and bluegrass and Americana, you'll find open tunings like open G all over the place, and it makes for a really great full type of sound. So go ahead.
Keith Richards wouldn't even use his low E to take it off.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing 5 strings essentially.
like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of all he did. I think he got like a 50,000 Telecaster that just sits in that, and he just plays that shape on it every night. But no, I absolutely my understanding of every time I've started a song in an open tuning like that, the G, that is my starting point. I usually start from a one, so I definitely have to build it. And if the song is in C, capo 5, and like I think of that as my home. But yeah, I don't ever really venture if I'm just being a guitarist for someone, or standard tuning is definitely the most comfortable place in my mind where I just kind of like I remember all the shortcuts and everything, and I instantly forget everything. So like open tunings for me are only a territory for creation, but not so much like in I think I'm losing track of the question. Like I'm saying, like, yes, I have to use a capo. I can't. I don't know many people who do play with a. I mean, maybe with a slide. Maybe if I was playing slide, I wouldn't use a capo because a capo lowers the action and makes it so much harder to.
Yeah, and especially open tunings are almost designed for slide work. I don't know a lot of slide players who play in standard at all. Because when you set up an open tuning,
That's the best one to play in standard. That's what's frustrating because you would never know. Like it was good. Derek Trucks is like pretty much always doing the Dwayne Allman key. I guess it's open E. Derek
it's definitely an open tuning.
It's always open E. I don't like Derek Truck standard tuning.
Yeah,
is open E.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, I play slide pretty sparingly. I do enjoy slide, but like JD Simo is in the band Simo. SI is a great example of someone who just like totally tears it up. I learned about Derek Trucks through his course where but he plays slide completely standard tuning. And I've got buddies here in Berry. Will Cash plays guitar, slide guitar and standard tuning, but it's amazing when you see it done right, and it's like, part of me will never regret the songs I've written, alternate tunings, but part of me always wishes that I had forced myself to maybe like, okay, you came up with it, but then reacclimate yourself in standard tuning. And because like it is frustrating live to just be like, yeah, I brought 4 guitars, they're all in different tunings, and there's going to be a lot of time in between songs where I'm making but
be a practical nature to it.
They're a great creation tool. They practically do kind of detract in a live format, and they are kind of a crutch in the way that a capo is. You always have to tell yourself that a capo or like a tuning, an alternate tuning, is always a crutch, because standard tuning really, I mean, it's there's a reason why we use standard tuning.
So we got time for one last question here, and appropriately enough, it is about your strings, being that we're on the Elixir Strings channel. So this, I think, it was kind of a more open question, but since we're talking acoustic today, one of our viewers here wants to know kind of what your preferred string gauges are. Now, for me, I go really heavy on acoustic, much, much heavier than I do on electric. Some people were teasing me before you joined because I said I had just strung up one of my Strats with 9 gauges, and then people make fun of that because it's kind of the easy way out. But what do you prefer, especially on acoustic? Do you go heavy?
Yeah, these are 13s.
Okay.
Uh,
That's a
but
good hefty string.
I was worried that the guitar in front of me didn't have elixirs on them, but I was like, oh yeah, these are elixirs.
For those who don't know, Early was actually our Elixir Strings Artist of the Month recently, which is how we got him hooked up with some new fresh strings for his guitar, and how we actually coordinated this little event today. So you've got 13 on the E string, which for an electric player like me might as well be a tree trunk.
I'm actually kind of getting these days. I mean, since the album got put out, if it hadn't have been for quarantine, I would have almost, uh, you know, um, only been playing electric guitar because the album it's an electric album. So, um, but like this past, I guess, year and a half, and in preparation of releasing that, I was playing so much electric that when I would return to the acoustic and play 13s, it was just too much. Like, and even when I was at the top of like, you know, playing, uh, 13s, I've always played 13s. And you can never bend the G string to
No.
a full step, no matter what. Like, and that's like putting like three fingers, like
Yeah.
like,
You're really going to push it.
and that's the easiest spot to bend it. Like maybe but also no, the G's, it's up in G, so that G is at the normal tension it should.
Tension, yeah.
Like 12s, man. 12s is the sweet spot. You get the good bass response. You get the good treble response.
Yeah.
Right now on my Martin, I have Elixir 12s, and that's one. It's funny because I was like, man, I'm gonna like I woke up late, so it was like I'm gonna be ashamed if I'm playing an acoustic without elixirs on it. But
So what are you playing here? This isn't your Martin. What have you got
this
here?
is Recording King.
Okay, cool.
They make a very, very cool, affordable workhorse. This is an RD 316.
Very cool.
Is essentially a D18, uh, in terms of like tone. And I mean, this is made to spec like a Martin. A lot of Recording King stuff is pre-work guitars and Martin guitars.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that will do it for today. First and foremost, I want to thank Early for getting on with us here, talking us through all sorts of different really great acoustic techniques and style tips and things that hopefully people joining the live stream and people watching this at a later date can implement in their own music. I know I've learned a bunch, especially coming from the electric world, trying to figure out how I can make my acoustic playing a little bit more interesting and dynamic. I think some of the things that you shared with us today are just really wonderful things that anybody can pick up and add to their own style, and really play around with it. So where can people find you online? I'm assuming Instagram, Facebook, all the standard channels.
Early James on Facebook and Instagram. I'd say mostly Instagram.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you again so much for joining us, and thank you everybody in the live chat. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of your questions today, but hopefully you learned something new. I would encourage everybody to go check out Early's record. It's fantastic. Check out the interview we did with him in the latest issue of Performer Magazine. It's in print and also online at performermag.com. And be sure to check out all of the offerings from Elixir Strings on their site too, because you might want to experiment with something new. Like me, I think I might go to 12 too, because I've been on 13s for a while and I want a little easier go of it. So for all of us here, again, my name is Ben, editor from Performer Magazine. We've been here with Early James. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
All right, everybody.
See ya.